Welcome to Here Comes the Boom, a Kentucky basketball recruiting podcast brought to you by KSR and KSR Plus. It's been quiet on the recruiting front, but we've got some things to talk about. Before we do, go and subscribe to KSR Plus. Go and subscribe to the KSR YouTube channel. We're going to have tons of content coming your way. Now let's talk about some of the younger guys because the USA U16 roster just came out for the U16 Men's America Cup. A lot of guys that Kentucky will probably be after in the coming years. A few guys that Kentucky's already talking to. Let's just kind of talk about some of the players that made this roster, starting with the one player that Kentucky has offered, or no, sorry, the one player that Kentucky has been in contact with Marcus Spears Jr., a 6'7" forward out of Texas. And then you have the player that Kentucky has offered with C.J. Rosser, 6'9" forward, number one player in the class in the On3 industry ranking. So those are two players that Kentucky has on their radar, but I'm sure a lot of these guys will be in contention for maybe number one in that class, and players that Kentucky will be going after, starting with Bentley Lusaqueno, who we talked to over at the Nike EYBL in Memphis, number one player in ESPN's 2028 rankings. So still over a year until Kentucky can reach out directly. He's got some offers, but I expect things to pick up once he enters his senior year. Another player, Shaylin Shepard, a 6'8" forward center out of California, also in that 2028 class. I've heard a lot of people say that they think it's going to be between Bentley and Shaylin as that number one player in that class. So those are two guys to watch for. Then you've got Beckham Black, a 6'1" guard, the younger brother of Anthony Black, who played at Arkansas and is now in the NBA. A lot of good players here. Jordan Page is another one I'm watching for, 6'5" guard forward out of North Carolina. But I want to stick and talk about C.J. Rosser because he is a really good player out of North Carolina. So he's got Duke, North Carolina, all those schools going after him. He's visited Duke a few times, but Kentucky offered after that recent EYBL period in Memphis. Really impressed them. I think he's the one of maybe four players that Kentucky's offered in 2027. So they're clearly making him an early priority, and I expect them to reach out when that contact period hits on June 15th. And then Marcus Spears Jr., he plays alongside Ryan Hampton in that 2027 class, both in high school and in AAU. Still kind of very raw, still kind of learning how to play in his body, but you can clearly see the potential there. And I think within a few years, he'll be in contention as a 5-star in that 2027 class. So that's my thoughts on this U16 roster. Obviously, it's super early. This is 2027, 2028 guys. So Kentucky hasn't really prioritized anyone, but I'm sure that they'll be watching this USA event and trying to get an early radar on who they like in these early classes. Now let's talk about some 2026 recruiting because this is the more relevant information right now, given that we're about to see 2026 recruiting out in full gear, given that we're hitting the summer periods, we're hitting these live evaluation periods. And I want to talk about a few guys, starting with Tyron Stokes, number one player in the class. We've talked about him plenty. He was supposed to visit Kentucky. I expect that visit to be rescheduled. And the two big contenders I'm looking at for him are Louisville and Kansas, the two schools that he's visited. But I'm also looking at Arkansas. They're a school that I expect him to visit at some point. And then you've got some other schools involved like North Carolina, BYU, USC, and a few others. So there's a lot of schools involved there. But right now, Kansas and Louisville are probably the two biggest contenders to Kentucky for Stokes' commitment. Then you have Brandon McCoy, a player that we haven't talked about very often. There's been some reclass buzz with him, but right now he's in that 2026 class. Duke's been a school that's been mentioned with him a ton. He had an official visit with them in the fall. Joe Tipton reported that he's planning a visit to Alabama. So those are the two schools that you're hearing about as far as getting visits, but we may hear some more about Kentucky in the near future. Then we've got Caleb Holt, another 5-star guard. He's out of Loganville, Georgia, but he's originally from Huntsville, Alabama. So Alabama and Auburn are heavily involved in that recruitment. He took an official visit to Ole Miss. That's the only official visit he's taken so far, but he's taken a bunch of unofficials: Auburn, Alabama, Georgia, Georgia Tech, Houston, Tennessee. Kentucky was one of the schools that came in for an in-home. Houston was another. So a lot of schools involved here, but Kentucky is in the thick of things, and I expect them to get an official visit if they start to really push in that recruitment. Then we got to talk about Jason Crow Jr. because he's been the talk of this 2026 class when it comes to Kentucky, given the ties with his family and Kentucky assistant coach Jason Hart. Jason Crow Jr.'s father, Jason Crow Sr., is lifelong best friends with Kentucky assistant coach Jason Hart. And Crow told me at the Memphis EYBL session that he was supposed to join Hart at G League Ignite before the team was shut down after the 2023-24 season. So that's when Jason Hart left G League Ignite to go coach at Kentucky. And now they're making a strong push for Jason Crow Jr. But I'm also watching those in-state schools like UCLA and USC. I expect this one to take a little bit of time. I expect him to take visits in the fall. And he was telling me he could make a decision in the fall. His dad said he's looking to make a decision in the spring. So this could drag on for quite some time. I don't expect anything to happen too soon. Last player I want to talk about, Tay Kinney, obviously a Kentucky native, but he's now playing at Overtime Elite in Atlanta. Kentucky was in for an in-home with him. Another school that came in for an in-home was the new staff at Xavier, but the old staff at Xavier now at Texas is also recruiting him pretty hard. So I'm looking at Louisville and Texas as two of the bigger contenders to Kentucky for Kinney's recruitment. He's got a big list of schools, I think the top 15. I expect that to get cut in the coming months, maybe down to a top 10, top 5, something around there when he takes official visits. But I expect Kentucky to be in the thick of things along with Louisville and Texas as two other schools to watch. So those are 5 guys that I'm looking at in this 2026 class, but that's not to say that they're not in good spots with some other guys like Anthony Thompson, Mika Murinen. You've got Jordan Smith Jr., Kristen Collins. So a lot of good players in this class that Kentucky's going after, but these are 5 that I have my eyes on. My final thought today, Kentucky's in a good spot. Now that you've got Otega back, this 2025 roster is complete. I feel like I've said that a million times, but now I truly believe it is complete. Now we're all eyes on 2026. We've got a bunch of live periods coming up with Peach Jam and the Adidas 3SSB finals. So Kentucky will be out on the recruiting trail. And then we've got these U16, U19, all these USA basketball events that Kentucky will be keeping a close eye on. So lots of big events this summer. Be sure to go and subscribe to KSR Plus, subscribe to the KSR YouTube channel. We're going to have all the recruiting information you could look for when it comes to Kentucky basketball. So be sure to go and check that out. We'll see you again soon. Thanks for joining us.